Hey everyone, happy Thursday. You are watching Conversationality, a bi-weekly show brought to you by the co-founders of Optionality, your community for discussing the now of work. How was
That's
that,
right.
Elisa? I didn't read it this time.
Well, it's great. That's what
Great.
it is.
That's what we are.
Yep,
Hi
yep.
everyone, Jory Desjardins here with
At least
Elisa Camahort Page. And yes, this is our bi-weekly conversation. Usually we riff on stuff that has happened in the news or that we've written about. And the thing that has cropped up for us was really around our theme for the month and some recent writing that we've been doing and that I touched on this week in particular this week with my essay. This whole idea of of transition versus transformation. Both words I hear often used interchangeably, and I often wonder what's the difference. And I didn't really care, if I'm honest, until somewhat recently because I've personally been going through a transition, but I feel like it's not like many of the other transitions I've gone through. I feel like careers are just transitions that just keep building on each other. This has been a very different kind of transition for me, and I think it checks the box for transformation.
Ooh,
And
these big
so, of
words.
course, I may have mentioned that to Elisa, which of course got her all like, "Well, hold up. Let's talk about that. Let's try to define that because I to maybe this was your point when we were discussing it. I think that transformation is an often overused word.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, especially in digital where there's digital transformation and heads of transformation and people expect that to mean that you're doing something like waving a magic wand and fixing and I'm not sure what else is supposed to happen in a transformation. It's like the reveal, or as my daughters would say, like it's the glow up. And I said, well, what's the difference between a glow up and just putting on some makeup, right? Oh no, glow up, it's a vibe. It's a totally different thing according to my daughter. So
Okay.
it made me think a little more about what is the difference and how does it even matter if it's a transition versus a transformation, and maybe if it's helpful, knowing a distinction can help you think about your own transitions and whether or not you're just kind of taking the same problems into a new context, or if you're really, really digging deep to change something in your life, in your career, that is really going to make a difference for you.
Yeah, to your point about transformation being overused, I feel like it's a salesy word. Digital transform. I'm going to transform how you do this, that, or the other, or I transformed this. But in fact, it's because transformation does seem like a much bigger word. Like
Yeah.
there's much more happening than in a transition. However, at the same time, there's also kind of these narratives out there about how everything you're doing is building on the previous stuff you've done. And everything is like you bring your whole self. Like, there's a common thing people say about, well, everything I've gone through made me the person I am today. So, like that's a good thing, right? Like, like, so I'm like, in that sense, life is just one long, you're transitioning to the next phase, the next thing, and you're bringing everything with you. Whereas I feel like transformation feels to me more like, oh, going from the larvae into the butterfly. I mean, it's like a necessary process, but a butterfly doesn't really look anything like a larvae and has wildly different capabilities and all of that. So I think when I think about defining those two words, um, it's that one is sort of like this steady, you're simmering away, and then you come to a boil, and then sometimes you got to turn the heat down and let it simmer for a while before you're going back. Whereas a transformation is like, boom, coming out of the chrysalis, you're a butterfly now. Wow. I
Right.
also think it's interesting to think about transition is we use that word, like sometimes people use that about death. Oh, they've transitioned. You can use transition, we use as a kind of, like, sometimes it feels like we use it when we are trying to soften the edges of a big change. Uh, and so, yeah, so I feel like when it comes to definition, when everyone's selling that they're going to help you transform, I'm like, do all these companies really need to transform, or do they need to just keep, evolving? It's like when I used to hate the word pivot. Do you remember that? I used to always complain
Oh,
about
yes. That's
everybody's
a new
pivoting all the time. And I'd be like, what do you mean pivoting? You're just like, you're evolving. Here's the next thing you're launching, or the next thing, or you're sunsetting this and you're launching that. Like, pivoting makes it sound like just such a hard left turn, when really a lot of pivots are just natural evolution. So it
yes.
reminds me a lot of that as well. Excuse me, as well.
Well, so one of the ways I like to define transformation is by cutting down what it's not.
Yeah.
Right? I'll tell you what has really annoyed me of late. So, I've been doing a lot of work and thinking around AI transitions.
Right.
And of course, it's like everybody is in AI transformation. And I'm like, okay, if your version of AI transformation is firing a third of your employees, that's not transformation. That's firing people. It's not changing the people in your organization. It may not even really mean changing the way you do business. You're
Mm-mm.
just adding some tools and need to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's different. So
Yeah.
I've been thinking about why applying this to my own life. Why do I feel like I'm in a transformation as opposed to a transition?
Yeah. Why do
And I
you?
wrote about this, and for me, it's not like I haven't dyed my hair. I haven't. I mean, beyond the usual root touch up. Um,
Thanks.
I haven't transitioned my roots. I haven't done any of that. I don't, didn't get work done, not yet, but it's been much more internal. And that was where kind of like this progression I've written before about sitting in the gap of sitting in this place where you don't even know which way you're going, but you just got to do it nonetheless, because if you don't have that complete pause, it's really hard to know where you really want to go. And a lot of these, I think, beliefs had started to kind of emanate from that period of things that I had been, and part of my operating system and ways I had been working on things that as we were going through our roadmap to restoration work, I'm like, oh, yes, I do think that. And that is a limiting belief. I haven't been able to truly transform because with these beliefs in place and these scripts, as I call them, in my head, even if I intellectually don't agree and think, I'm not going to listen to that, they still have played a role and been in the background, in the operating system. And truly exploring those underlying scripts, I've been able to clear a lot of the stuff that was keeping me from transitioning into new things that I had been wanting to do for a long time, but
Yeah.
they just didn't check all the boxes that I had already set up for myself. So that was what I mean about a transformation is, you know, may look the same, but the way I'm thinking about my work and how I want to present, and it's not necessarily uh, this very clear story of, oh, here's my past and now I'm doing this and it's all connected. No, it's like, and by the way, there were a couple things back here that I left that I'm kind of going back to. and I'm looking at it from a new lens with a different operating system. That to me is a transformation. And for any company that's looking to transform around AI, you can't really get that done unless you're really rethinking the way the work is getting done. And if you're not thinking about the humans involved and how they need to be on board with the new thinking, you're not going to be able to transform. You're just going to be able to cut and force and pressure until you realize it doesn't work. And then, good luck with that.
So would you say that you needed you needed to do, or you are in the process of internal transformation so that the external transition is actually in the right direction?
Mm, that is very fair.
And then if you think about, because I've been, I now get inundated with a lot of people sharing AI content. It follows me like a lot on LinkedIn, but even on Threads, I see a lot of people talking about, here are the AI prompts I use to do X. And some of that's really useful. I save those posts, and some of them I even go back to. But I'm so struck by people sharing how they're using AI. And I think you bring this up in your post, or no, in one of your videos on LinkedIn. They really want to share how they use AI to do the same thing, maybe faster and dirtier.
Yeah,
Like, and that's not transforming, that's transitioning to digital, virtual employee, not virtual, but synthetic employees instead of human employees. But you're trying to basically do the same stuff faster. And they will say, I didn't have capacity before to do this much analysis or this much, but now I have more capacity. I'm like, you could have built that capacity with people too, right? Like
mhm,
how you're spending your time and your money, but you're still trying to achieve the same things. You're just trying to increase your capacity. But I continue to think that um, where the real value and potential is in AI is not about doing the same things you already do faster, cheaper. You can't even really say better, because I don't know, my own experience, and I've now been trying to go
not
pretty deep.
always.
There's a lot of stuff you have to check, and it's like working with a junior employee, honestly. And you find things, and that whole thing about, oh, it's just quicker to do it myself. This is also true sometimes about some of the stuff I end up asking AI to do, and then I'm like, oh, but wait a minute, where'd you get that from? Why are you saying that? And what? And that doesn't sound like me at all, or whatever it is. Um, and so what strikes me about so much of the content is, I think, what you talked about in a video on LinkedIn about how it's just trying to be faster, cheaper, dirtier of the same stuff, more capacity for the same stuff. And that's not transformation for sure. That is not an AI transformation of your company. That is transitioning to synthetic workforce, right? And and you really have to ask yourself, where is anyone asking themselves, what are the downsides to transitioning to a synthetic workforce to do the same work? And it's not like we've never
Yeah,
seen anything like this before. I feel like in the dot-com bust days, one way companies tried to bring themselves out of the bust was by really doubling down on offshoring and outsourcing. And that made a lot of sense for some stuff, but for some stuff, it ended up being rolled back because they're like, oh, it does not make sense for this. Um, so, but I do think you could say, okay, let's look at this differently. How could we use AI to do stuff we aren't doing? We haven't thought of doing. We don't know how to do. How could we, if you're going to use it to get more efficient in what you already do, the dream, right? The thing that proponents of AI promise you is that, oh, it will free you up to do more
that's right.
creative, strategic stuff, but nobody's keeping the people around to do that. So
Right.
if you're going to transition to synthetic workforce doing the baseline stuff you already do and need to do, who
Yeah,
is doing the transformative stuff that could work even with AI's assistance or contribution to do the strategic or innovative or creative stuff that you're not doing yet, and you've now made room for that. But if you cut all your people, you are not making room you've made the room, but you have no people to execute on that. So I feel like
Yeah.
that's how I kind of see that.
I think we're in a very preliminary phase where the only way we can show it's working, at least from a company standpoint, is by showing how much faster and productivity and efficiency. Like those are the
Yeah,
metrics, but not creativity. I mean, we don't even have metrics for the exponential opportunities that can arise when you've just freed up
yeah,
human intelligence to pursue things other than spreadsheets,
yeah.
right? And all the other stuff that personally I don't care for, but some of us may, and I'm sorry. Sorry that this has taken over what you like to do, but there are other things. And that is where we're just not there yet. I don't think we'll never get there, but that's not a transformation. The former. The latter is what we haven't yet really defined. So we're all talking about the transformation, but I don't think we're there.
And you actually need humans for that because by definition, AI doesn't really help, it's not really going to create something that has never existed. It's not, it doesn't, because it's trained on what has existed.
Yeah.
And so you got to have the, as they say, humans in the loop if you ever really want to go find something new. Now, not everybody does. That's the thing. Maybe some businesses are just like, oh, I am perfectly happy doing the same exact thing, just with fewer people, lower costs, and more productivity. And I'm like, great, but that's not digital transformation. That is I like this term I've just made up right here on this call. You're transitioning to a synthetic workforce is what you're doing. And there are going to be consequences for that, especially if you're a consumer based company, and if all the consumer based company, the consumer marketing to consumers, and they all transition to synthetic workforce. Where are you going to find all those consumers for your product
Well,
if
and
we don't
you've
have
taken your value proposition, which is faster, cheaper, to a place where anyone can replicate it,
yeah,
right? Anyone who uses your methods. But your differentiator has to be from your people and their higher order thinking. And if you've just hollowed out your org, where's that gonna come from? Right? You're basically making yourself more productive to a point of just, it's like a race to the bottom, I guess, or a race
diminishing
to the average.
race to the average. Yeah, so true. Race to the average. Yeah, and by the way, I don't think we're saying anything wildly new than what other people are saying. I think something you and I both kind of ride along is that, like, that doesn't make me say never use AI. You're just giving in to the man if you use AI. Like, I'm not going to jump down Reese Witherspoon's throat about saying she wants more women at the table. I don't know if she has investments in AI, and that's dry. I mean, some people are very convinced that she said that because, she's making money from saying that. And I'm like, all right, I haven't, I don't know if that's true. I think it doesn't make it better to not have women at the table. It never makes it better to
No.
not have more diverse voices deciding what happens, deciding what's important, deciding how to build the guardrails. So, yeah, I would like more women in more positions of power. We have seen what happens. More women, more from every historically marginalized or underrepresented group, because we know what happens when they're not in the room. We know, like, we've got decades of experience of what happens when a homogenous group of people who have a tremendous amount of privilege make all the decisions about how technology should develop and what the business model is and what, who it is catering to. You bring up, when you're bringing up the, like, how do you measure creativity and stuff? I mean, that's a really, I think, was it in our last conversation we were talking about changing the KPIs that we give ourselves, um, because the traditional KPI, first of all, probably a lot of us who don't have to care what Wall Street thinks still operate in our brain like we should be measuring the KPIs Wall Street cares about. Like, you know what I mean? It's like we're not public companies, or we're not, if we're not venture backed, because venture has kind of taken on Wall Street's goals because they
Yes.
see it as necessary for an eventual exit, right? To have an eventual exit, you got to care about Wall Street goals, because either you're going to go public, or probably a public company or a company that plans to go public is going to acquire you. Those are your exit. Once you take funding, you got to care about what your exit is. Your exit paths are dictated by what Wall Street cares about. So anyone in that whole ecosystem, from private equity and VC backed to public, they have to care about those metrics. But there's just a whole bunch of us who are not in that ecosystem, aren't planning to be in that ecosystem, and yet still have it ingrained in our mind that those are the KPIs we care about. And and I kind of still think that the result of those, having those be having that be the ethos of Wall Street, of what you should do that's the right thing, creates this scenario where we have people who do not know what the meaning of the word enough is, and are acting like hoarders and misers when they have more than they could ever do anything with. And it's not just billionaires. People like to say billionaires, but they're only like how many of them in the whole country. But even you don't have to be a billionaire to be really caught up in this idea that nothing is ever enough. No one should be able to take anything from you ever, including the government. And your goal at all times should be consistent scaling, growing more, more, more. And I'm like, I don't know how we get out of that mindset, but it's ridiculous.
That is just, an exacerbation of a system,
Yes.
and that is not transformation.
Right.
Once again, and what does make me a little nervous, is well, makes me a lot nervous. I Of course, we can only see right now the proliferation of AI in organizations and in the world, and the companies themselves. And there is a playbook for emerging technology, frontier tech, where, okay, we're now onto something. Now let's become the Facebook of, right? Or the Google of, or now we've taken that model and we just smack it
Yeah.
on. And that's what it is now. And I think this is a huge opportunity to now say, all right, maybe that playbook belongs in, the 10 years ago chapter. This is a new playbook where we
Yeah.
actually have to, like, we started to get somewhere with ESG in the world, and ESG goals in companies. And then of course, current administration just squashed all of that. But I'm starting to come back to those values. I keep bumping up against, like, this is where we're going to really start to hurt, where certain people are pushing it through and making and defining what this looks like at a time when it's the most existential we've ever had in this country, in the world. It's a threat to the environment if it's not handled right. It's a threat to mental health if it's not handled right. It's a threat to human flourishing and our capability to earn a living if it's not handled right. There's so much behind this. This is when we actually need a new model. We can't just say, okay, do we advertise on it or not?
Right.
Right? That's
Yeah.
like the question is like, oh, should we go there? I have a few other questions to ask before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like,
You know,
how about we decide if we're going to get everyone on board and educated and how to use it in a way that doesn't replace them when they're done with school? How do we think about that before we bring it to the world and make
yeah.
that the only model for how this is going to work?
Right. And a lot
Yeah.
of those early, those companies, there was a very like, well, it's that move fast and break things. A lot of
Yeah.
those companies didn't really have a like a business model that was profitable. Some of them still really don't. And a lot of them eschewed guardrails because it would slow them down. And then once it got to the point where, oh shit, we should have some guardrails, then implementing guardrails when you've already scaled is really hard. And it takes a
Mhm.
big hit. Guardrails cost money. Guardrails, you're investing in something to have guardrails. And so I really just wish that just more of these. I'm not saying no company out there is thinking about guardrails, but apparently so far the guardrails have been pretty easy for AI to kind of blow right past. So more needs to be invested, but that also means more needs to be. I know regulation's a dirty word, but it's a public health issue. Like you brought up mental health and the environment. These are public health issues. These are national security issues. These are personal security issues. Like our government should suck it up and do what they never really did with social media, which is take a stronger hand in helping establish those guardrails.
Yes.
Because we know what it all social media already contributed to, like, the just fraying our social fabric and our democracy. Like, an AI is going to be 10 times worse. And again, I'm saying this as someone who like uses AI every day, isn't anti AI. I'm not anti AI. Like, I use it for all sorts of things.
We're AI humanists, Elisa.
That
AI
Oh yeah,
humanists.
who brought up that term? Somebody, yeah, I like that term. But I do ask myself, how can I use AI not to get more efficient or more productive? Like, everything I try to do that's supposed to help me be like more organized, it just takes more work than just putting a note in my calendar to do this. Like, oh, okay. Like, I have tried to automate some organizational things with Claude Cowork, and it has not been worth it to me. Like, it has not helped me that much. What I'm trying to use it for is learning new things, messing around. And, I wrote a post on this for optionality, but I'm really trying to say, hey, I have an idea. And in the past, I would have said, oh, I don't really have the time or the capacity or the skill to just even mock up what this idea is. And so many little ideas would be in my head and then just kind of go nowhere, right? Or maybe I'd make a little deck out of it and then never do it. And now I really can just go, hey, let me see if I can like make a little mock up of this. What would it look like? And then I can look at it and say, oh, is this worth pursuing? Like, so it's giving me the opportunity to exercise my creativity, to manifest my ideas, to learn something either I hadn't thought about in 20 years or something I never learned and always wanted to. Like, um, and that to me is and you were talking about this in one of your videos as well. That was like improving my sense of agency. I'm in control of my learning and curriculum. I'm building, like, oh, I want to learn these things. This is how I'm going to use this new technology to help me do that. And I see nothing wrong with that. I see that as being like how it could help all humans kind of enhance your humanness and try things, experiment, mess around. Like, we could all do with that, messing around a little more. Um,
Well, I think you're describing right now your definition of transformation.
oh, really?
Yes. I think you've just described the difference for you. A transition would just be like, oh, I'm using something that helps me get this done a little faster.
Yeah.
You're using it for transformative purposes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I'll give
attached
you
to
this.
your agency.
I think I've mentioned this before. I'm learning Spanish because I always wanted to. I grew up hearing Spanish because that was my dad's first language, but it was the 70s and no one ever taught me. Like, there was no effort for me to learn this language at all in the house or in my family. And I've always regretted it. And because I took French and because English and Spanish do have a lot in common, like, I can catch a lot. If I'm reading, I can catch the gist of a lot. But I can't understand spoken, and I couldn't speak it other than the phrases all Californians learn, like "Cómo estás?" and, stuff that all of us can probably say because we're just California. We're around a lot of Spanish. So I created this curriculum in Claude, and Claude, by the way, didn't just make things for me. It pointed me to a great free app that I'm using to learn, a great podcast that using to learn. So anyway, last week I was listening to a video. One of our candidates for governor here in California is Latino, and our head of our assembly in California is Latino. So that's former Secretary of HHS Javier Becerra, and then the head of the assembly is Rivas, that's his name. Anyway, they had a little video they did in Spanish and it was on Threads. And I understood like 80% of it. And I was extremely like, wow, like, did I know exactly the word tense? But I recognized the root of the verb. I knew what verbs they were using. I wasn't always 100% confident on what tense they were using, but I understood the verbs. I understand. And I'm sure they were speaking extremely low grade level Spanish for that ad because it was supposed to be a very approachable, accessible ad. But I was like, wow, 6 weeks ago, I would not have understand. I would have understood maybe 10% of that. And I feel pretty great about that. Like,
Transformation. We
yes,
are
yes,
we are nearing a close
yeah.
here, so I think we wanna bring it home.
Bring
We
it
have
home,
just
Joy.
described the difference
Okay.
bringing it home. We have just described the difference between a transition and a transformation. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be give me a word.
Well, it has to be expansive, I think.
Yes. It
Um,
has to involve agency.
that's good too. It's
It
taking you
has
some
to yes,
it's not just
that's
taking
right.
you where you're already going faster. It's expanding where you're going. It's expanding and you are in the driver's seat. Ha, ha, ha.
Yes. Perfect.
All right. That's good. All right. Well, come find us over on Optionality. We have our Optionality Life Substack, but optionality.life is where you find our private community. And there is both a premium and a no cost community membership over there on the Mighty Networks. And we will talk to you next time. Bye.